Hi, good morning, everyone. Guys, please let me know if the screen as well as my voice and everything seems to be clear. Please let me know that. Are you guys able to hear me and look this screen properly? Okay, that's good to know. Fine. So in that case, let me start with the session. Fine. So in the last session, if you had remember, we talked about what exactly is a sandbox and why do we require the sandbox and how to create them, right? Although I have taken one example from real time, I'm also going to take one today. I was having one deployment, but I keep it pending for just for this session. When yesterday I was about to do something in real time, but then I thought let's postpone this one day. And I was waiting for this class so that I could show you one deployment in a real time as well. Although we would going to take this with one of the 30 days trial account that we have created in the last session. So uh, so whenever we do any sort of development, we always do this onto the sandboxes. Sandboxes there are of different types. I have told you that there are of different types of sandboxes, and then I also have told I told you to find out the differences between dev pro and partial copy and full copy sandboxes. So these are usually there are four types of sandboxes: Dev Sandbox, Dev Pro Sandbox, partial copy sandbox, and a full copy sandbox. So this you should know. So what is the refresh intervals and how much data capacity sandbox is present? And there are only a few differences. I mean, if you would go to try to find it out, you probably would find only few points over there. That means there is not much of differences between, although, but yes, still there are few of the points which we should know. So whenever we do any sort of development, we always prefer it to be done on the sandbox first. And once you perform every sort of testing over there, we usually deploy this, right? We usually deploy this from one environment to the higher, from lower environment to the higher environment. Now, see, usually what happens is like there are two forms of deployments. Either you deploy something from one sandbox to another sandbox, or at the final moment, when everything has been tested and it seems to be a proper module, the stability and everything is same. I mean, is good. Then we finally perform deployment from sandbox to the production. So what we did, like in the last session, if you have remember, I have created two sandboxes. First of all, I have created a 30 days trial account because with the developer edition account what we were having, developer edition account does not provide you the facility to create sandboxes and thereby perform the deployments. That's just a training account, that's just a test account, right? So although see developer sandbox is what I'm saying, developer account is something which can perform everything, right? You can create a flow, you can create almost everything what you do in the real time. But there is one thing, like the deployment is something what we cannot perform on the devs and on the dev accounts what we have. So to learn that, what we did is like we have created one separate account, one 30 days trial account, and let me try to make a login into that as well. So yeah, so this was the account. Like I mean, this was the account what I have created that day, and I'll make a login into this. Yes. So this is a 30 days trial account that we have created on that day, isn't it? So, and now you can see there are 25 days left still. And that is not an issue. I can finish this by today, or maybe one more session would require to complete this. Otherwise, it's a short story. Now, within this, I have created two sandboxes. Now, I'm just thinking about like, should I show you this in the classic or in lightning? I'm just thinking of that. Let's move on to the classic. I'll take a separate session on, how to go in the lightnings. So I'll take a separate session on that. So let's move on to the classic for this one. So now what you can do is like, you can go to setup, and when you go with, if you would go to if you would go to deploy section, right, you can see sandboxes, outbound change set, inbound change set, deployment setting, and deployment status. Now I can, when I make a click on sandboxes, we will going to get the list of all of them what we have created. Now you see, with this, although we just get developer sandbox, 10 of them, we does not have any defro, partial or full copy sandbox, right? With this 30 days trial account. But to learn, to understand how to perform this whole process, this much is sufficient. Obviously, this much is very much sufficient for us to understand, right? So with that session, I have created these two sandboxes. One is developer, second is UAT. So whenever you create a sandbox, right, and when it's ready, see, you get this type of notification on your email, whatever you have supplied. So it would indicate that your sandbox, right, it is being ready, is ready. And if you wanted to access that sandbox, it would again give you that link, right? So what you can do is like, you can copy that link. Otherwise, you can definitely access it from test.salesforce.com. Like what we usually do is like, we go to login.salesforce.com. That is the one way. The another, whenever we wanted to access any sandbox, so the actual login is like, you can go with test.salesforce.com. Test.salesforce.com. This would eventually land you, on a page from where you can get the list of all those sandboxes, right? If your sandbox is not listed out over here, you can definitely do it like this. Give your username and your password, right? So whenever you wanted to access any sandboxes, you have to go with test.salesforce.com. Or second would be like, what you can do is like, you can copy this link and you can keep it with yourself, so that whenever you wanted to make a login, you can definitely log in from here. So if I would copy this, if I would copy and I would paste it out over here, I'll paste it out over here. So see, it's one and same thing actually, it's one and same thing. So either you can go with like this, by entering the password, you can make a login. Otherwise, like, you can even do it from test.salesforce.com. So these are essentially two ways by which we can make a login into a sandbox, by which we can make a login into a sandbox. Now, uh, because it has been written, let me show you something. So by using this URL, you can make an access. Now, what about the username and the password? What about the username and the password? Right? What about the username and the password? So understand one thing. Understand one thing. Do you see something called as dot developer at the end of this link? Dot developer. Not developer. Now, this is very important to understand. See, you have created these two sandboxes, right? You have created these two sandboxes. If I talk about, let me duplicate this tab. If I talk about this 30 days trial account, when the first time we have created this 30 days trial account, on this 30 days trial account, what is our username? What is our username? This is my username, right? This is my username. On this 30 days trial account, if I would ask you, what is my username? With what username we have created this 30 days trial account. So this is that username. Nahin? So what you have to do is like, you just have to first of all go with that username, usko aap copy karke apne pass rakho, right? You just paste it over here. है ना? And whatever, oh, I think I'm doing something wrong. Yes, 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 yes. So I have created a sandbox called as developer. This is my first sandbox, and the second one I have created as the name called UAT. All right, all right, all right. Login into sandboxes. Under this, we are looking. So we are like, we have created the first sandbox, what we have created with the name called as developer, right? So either you can go with test.salesforce.com, right? Test.salesforce.com. Or the second is like, inside in the mail, inside in your email, you have a link. You have click this link, click this link. to log in now. So I shall copy this one and I'll paste it out over here. All right, I'll paste it out over here. And then, now let me tell you one very interesting thing, which you always have to remember. Don't forget that. Okay. What is going to be my username and the password over here? What is going to be my username and the password? Now understand it. This is very important to understand. So what happens is like, whatever is your username on the production, whatever is your username on the production, right? So if I would go to this organization and I'll see for my username, right? If for example, if I have two more users, so their usernames are going to be listed out over here, right? If you want, I can clarify this with with actual environments as well. So so I go to my username. I find out that inside in this organization, my username is this one, SFDC. What is this? SFDC training batch 208 2298 at the rate force.com. So I'll copy and I'll paste it out over here. This is my username, isn't it? This is my username. And by the way, this is my password. So see, password is going to be same. Whatever the password you would use, whatever the password, whatever the password you would use inside in your production environment is going to be the same in this, right? Only there's one difference with your username. So what happens is like, whenever you create a sandbox, if a user is having this username, if a user is having this username, then, then, then you just have to append name. First of all, put up a dot over here at the end, this is and put up a dot and just append the name of the sandbox. Just append the name of the sandbox. So with this name, this becomes the username. This becomes the username on that particular sandbox, right? This becomes the username on that particular sandbox. Like we have one more sandbox, all right? Understand? We have one more sandbox. We have one more sandbox called as UAT, isn't it? So for UAT, what is going to be the URL? Let me show you that as well. So if I'll go back and I'll go with this UAT environment. For UAT, this is your link, right? For UAT, this is your link. So if inside the UAT environment you wanted to make a login, you'll have to make a use of this link. Now, what is going to be your username in this case? Password is going to be same, right? Password is going to be same. Your production password is always same in sandboxes, right? You don't require to generate a password over there. Whatever the password you use at the time when you make a login to the production environment, you can use the same password. You'll have to use the same password, right? But only thing is like, your username changes little bit. So this is our username on the production. This is my username, right? This is my username. What I'll have to do, what becomes my username on UAT dot the name of sandbox. What is the name of sandbox? Dot UAT dot, right? This is basically is like, I mean, this is basically how to make a login into sandbox environment, right? So your username at the end of the username, you just have to append the name of the sandbox. You just require to enter give the name of the sandbox, put up a dot over there, put up a period, and then followed by the name of the sandbox. So that becomes the username. All right. So now I'll show you like how we can make a login, how we can make a login. So we got this email, and this email informs us that both of the sandboxes what we have created are being ready to use. Even we can find out it from here as well that these are the two sandboxes and they are completely ready. All right. These are two sandboxes, they are completely ready. Now you can even you can even log in from here as well. So this is my developer sandbox. The another one is UAT sandbox. All right, this is my developer sandbox. The second one is the UAT sandboxes. So I'll just use my production password and I'll make a login to in the both of them. So first, let's make a login to developer sandbox. Similarly, let's make a login to the UAT sandbox as well. All right, just making myself to be switch from Lightning to Classic. Yes. So these two sandboxes. All right, these are these two sandboxes. Now let's do one thing. First, first what we are going to do would be like we would first of all understand like uh, how we can migrate the things, how we can deploy the things from one sandbox to the another sandbox. Let's what I'm going to do would be like I would be creating something inside in this development sandbox, developer sandbox, right? Here the name is, and I shall migrate that from developer to UAT, and from UAT, from UAT to the production. So this is going to be my series. Like I'll first of all create something. Maybe I am going to create an object and some few of the fields inside that object. And then, I would be performing a deployment from this developer sandbox. First of all, I'll take it to UAT, from one sandbox to another sandbox. And from UAT, I'm going to take it to the actual production environment. All right. So this is going to be our plan for now. अच्छा, अब इसमें एक चीज थोड़ा सा आप सुन लो यहाँ पे. We are about to start a topic called test classes in the developments, right? Yesterday we end up with the asynchronous programming. The next topic, although, is trigger. Now after trigger, I'm going to start a topic called as test classes. Test classes. So listen this very carefully, and I'm going to show you one real-time example for this. Don't worry. I have that example. I kept that deployment. I haven't performed that deployment because I wanted you to understand that thing. इसलिए मैंने फिर कल उसको नहीं किया और मैंने सोचा कि ये इसके साथ अपन लाइव करेंगे आप लोगों के साथ में. See, if you would deploy any configuration component, you have taken this training in two parts, non-coding and coding part, right? Whatever you have learned in the admin part, that configuration part, admin usually is called as config. So whatever you have learned during that configuration part, let's try to recap all those things. All right, let's try to think over those things which we have studied. What we have studied, we understand how to create the applications. Like you remember, we understand how to create the application that listed out over here, the app launcher. Then second thing, we understand how to create the custom objects, custom tabs, then custom fields. Then we understand like uh, how to create like it. All this has been done. Now relationship formula and everything is a part of that only. Then we understand like how to create, I guess, reports, or maybe before that we understand. Yeah, we understand how to create the business automation rules, like how to create the workflows, and then process builders. Flows, I'm going to take a separate session onto that. After once you have learned the lightning experience, next to this would be lightning experience, right? I'm going to take after this in the next weekend. I'm going to take a separate session on the lightning experience. Once the lightning experience has been completed, I'm going to make you understand about the flows as well. So we have learned like how to create a business automation. These are everything like workflow, process builder, and the flows. What are these? This is called as business automations, the tools of business automations, right? And then we have understand like how we can create the reports, how we can create the dashboards. Then we understand how we can create some custom profiles, how we create the sharing settings, how we uh, I mean, how we have created the assignment rules, right? These were the everything that we have done. So whenever you deploy something, which is a part of admin, which is a part of configuration, whenever you deploy something which is a part of configuration, guys, listen this very carefully. You don't require any test cases. You don't require to have any test class. But but whenever you deploy any code, whenever you deploy any code, that could be a simple class. You created a simple class, or you have created asynchronous classes like batch class. You have created a schedulable class, givable class. You created a class inside in that there is a future method. You have created a trigger. We are going to learn that. You have created APIs, application program interfaces. We are going to learn that as well in the integrations. After development, the next topic is integration. So whenever you created LWC components, and that LWC has server side controllers. So every such module, every such thing, what you have created with the code, you know, that first of all would require a test class. Without test class, you cannot deploy this. But then there is an exception. Listen this very carefully. Try to open the diagram so that I could talk more on that. And I'm going to talk once again when we will be learning the test classes. I'm going to talk once again about this. So if you have created a class, you must create a test class for that as well. You must create a test class for that as well. And now listen this very carefully. Listen this very carefully. If you are trying to deploy a trigger, right? I'm going to tell you this once again. फिर भी मैं चाहता हूं आप ध्यान से सुनिए अभी. Trigger must have at least 1% of code coverage. Trigger must at least have 1% of code coverage. How to check for that and everything would be a part of test classes. वो सब वहां पढ़ेंगे. अभी सिर्फ आपको ये जानना है कि if you have created a trigger, that trigger, if you are trying to deploy that trigger, must have at least 1% code coverage. What is this code coverage? I'm going to talk on that as well. Otherwise, a normal class must have at least 75% of code coverage. 75%. So if you have created a class, you must create a test class for that. And the test result, when you run that test class, the test should result into 75% of code coverage. What is this code coverage? What is this test class? This we are going to learn. All right. This we are going to learn. So please don't worry about that. Please don't think like, yeah, what sir is talking about. Like, ye kya bol rahe? No, 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 no. I'm just asking you to remember two figures, right? I'm just asking you without any background. I'm just asking you to remember two figures. If you wanted to deploy a trigger, it must have 1% of code coverage. That's a minimum requirement. Maximum you can take it to 100%. It's up to you. Otherwise, from the Apex point of view, from the Salesforce point of view, every trigger must at least have 1% code coverage. Whereas if you have a class, it must at least have 75% code coverage. And then you can deploy this. Otherwise not. But again, there is an exception. There is an exception. Listen this, guys, very carefully. ये कोई नहीं बताएगा बॉस तुमको. इतना तुमको कोई नहीं बताएगा जितना मैं तुमको हर चीज को एक्सप्लेन करता हूं ना, इतना कोई नहीं बताता. If you are deploying anything from one sandbox to another sandbox, for example, I am taking something from this sandbox to the second sandbox. Like right now, what we are trying to do, we would be trying to deploy something from developer sandbox to UAT sandbox. So whenever you are deploying something from one sandbox to another sandbox, if you are trying to deploy something from one sandbox to another sandbox, that time the code coverage is not required. That time the code coverage is not required. So if you have created a trigger or maybe a class, but for that you have not created a test class, because with the help of test class only we got this all coverages and everything. The code coverage is always the code coverage we always create this with the help of a test class only. Now, for example, I have created a trigger and a class, but for that one I have not created any test cases. It's okay. It's okay until you are migrating this, from one sandbox to another sandbox. If you are moving it from one sandbox to another sandbox, you are deploying it from one sandbox to another sandbox, then having a code coverage is not essential thing. I can move it from one sandbox to another. But when you are moving an entity, when you are moving a customized entity like triggers or classes, anything from sandbox to production, when you are moving it to production, it must have this code coverage. Without having a code coverage, you cannot move it anything to the production environment. Without having code coverage, you cannot move anything into production environment. Understand? So normally अब क्या होता है? They would ask you this question in interview. They would ask this question. और आप लोगों को बहुत ज्यादा जल्दबाजी रहती है आंसर देने की. You just heard 30% of the question and then you start giving 100% of your answer. This happens every time out of your anxiety, out of that whatever is going on in your mind. You just listen, you just concentrate, you just understand on 30% portion of question and then you start giving the अरे भाई उसको पूरा सुन तो लो. Take your time to think. इसलिए मैं देखो when I take this mentorship में जब मैं बात करता हूँ मेरे कैंडिडेट्स के साथ, I always used to say them, listen my question carefully and repeat that question before giving the answer. Repeat the question. Do this every time. Do this every time in the mock. If you don't want to do this in the real time interview, that's okay. But at least prepare your mind to repeat that question. I ask you how many different forms of relationships are there. Repeat the question. Repeat the question. Okay. How you wanted to know how many different forms of relationships we have in Salesforce? All right. Let me try to understand it. This gives you a buffer time. First of all, you prepare your brain that what is the question, and second, you take that 1 to 2 seconds to make to collect that answer. So this is a good practice. So don't be in hurry to give the answer. This just show your nervousness and your anxiety during that interview. You are not fully confident, right? Because if you are confident, you would take your time. Taking a time does not mean you are a dumb. No, it means you are thinking onto that. This is good. So interview को ना ऐसा नहीं देना पड़ता यार. Don't be always in a hurry. Question is, how much code coverage is required when I move to? How much code coverage is required if I'm moving a class from one sandbox to another sandbox? How much code coverage is required when I'm moving a class from one sandbox to another sandbox? और बिना सोचे समझे 75% code coverage is required. 75% for a class, 1% for a trigger. अच्छा. My question was, when you are moving something from one sandbox to another sandbox, how much code coverage is required? What is the ideal answer for this? What is the ideal answer? No code coverage required. Actually, answer is true. No code coverage required. But there could be a better version of this answer. देखो, पहला answer, 75% code coverage is required for a normal class and 1% for a trigger. Absolutely wrong. Wrong answer. Why? Because when you are moving things from one sandbox to another sandbox, you don't require to have any code coverage. Answer wrong. दूसरा answer, no code coverage is required. No. When you are moving things from one sandbox to another sandbox, no code coverage. Answer is right, not appropriate. This answer is right, but not there could be a better version of this answer. What is that better version? What is that better version? How to give this answer in a very appropriate form? So the answer could be like, see, try to elaborate things. You know the answer. आपको पता है ना? आप जानते हो ना कि जब आप सैंडबॉक्स टू सैंडबॉक्स मूव करते हो तो आपको कोड कवरेज नहीं लगता. इट एक्चुअली इज रिक्वायर्ड व्हेन यू आर मूविंग समथिंग फ्रॉम सैंडबॉक्स टू प्रोडक्शन. तो आपको कोड कवरेज लगता है. अब सुनो, एक बेस्ट प्रैक्टिस ये होती है, इवन दो वी वर्क ऑन टू सैंडबॉक्स, एंड नॉर्मली क्या होता है जानते हो, सैंडबॉक्स टू सैंडबॉक्स मूवमेंट आपको करनी पड़ती है, राइट? आपको करनी पड़ती है. बट फाइनल जो है सैंडबॉक्स टू प्रोडक्शन, नॉर्मली देयर इज अ रिलीज सर्विस टीम. इसके बारे में भी मैंने बात किया था लास्ट सेशन में. एवरीथिंग व्हाट आई यूज टू से इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. इफ यू कैच, इफ यू if you note down those terminology and if you would use those terminologies in your interview, nobody can reject you. बस वो मेरी टर्मिनोलॉजीज होना वहां पे, आपकी अपनी नहीं होना. मैंने कहा था कि देयर इज अ रिलीज सर्विस टीम which take care, which usually take care of migrating things from sandbox to production. We usually don't do that. We never touch the production in normal cases. Unless you are somebody who is like very senior. और मैंने दो example दिए थे उस moment पे, if you would remember, कि I am working for two separate organizations. For one of the organization, I used to do this migration. Until production, I used to do that. And in another organization, I just move it from sandbox to sandbox. But there is a release service team who take care of taking things from sandbox to production. We never go to that production. We never touch that. We don't have any credentials. Developer के credentials ही नहीं होते production के. लेकिन मैंने दोनों scenarios आपको समझाए थे. So now what could be the better version of your answer for this? Whenever we are moving, whenever we are moving anything, any component, it could be a class, or could be a trigger, right? Whenever we are moving it from one sandbox to another sandbox, actually that time, we don't require to have, the test coverage. So we don't require to have a test coverage when you are moving the things from one sandbox to another sandbox. So proper test coverages are actually required when you are migrating things from sandbox to the production. When you are migrating the things from sandbox to the production, that time actually. So whenever, if we are taking something from sandbox to production, that time we require. And in that time, for if you are, for example, if you are moving a trigger, you would going to require minimum of 1%. Maximum it could be 100. And for a normal class, for a class, this is 75% minimum, right? Minimum. अभी कहानी खत्म नहीं हुई है. Things are getting recorded. You can prepare your answer in the same way. And I would really appreciate if you would prepare this answer in the same way which I am explaining you right now. So when we migrate something from the sandbox to another sandbox, that time we don't require to have the code coverage. If we are moving the things from one sandbox to another sandbox, we merely don't require to have any code coverage. Code coverages are actually required when you are migrating things from sandbox to production. Because production movement cannot be done without having a proper code coverage. And that time, for the trigger, it's minimum 1%, and for a class, it's 75%. At least 75% you should have. Maximum you would have it 100%. All right. At least 75%. But as a best practice, as a best practice, as a best practice, even though when we are moving something from one sandbox to another sandbox, we used to provide the test classes as well. We used to give the test cases. It's not required, it's recommended. It's not required, but it is recommended. Why it is recommended, I'm telling you. तो आपका आंसर यहां तक रहे. Even though if you are migrating thing from one sandbox to another sandbox, it is not required to have the code coverage. Still, we maintain this legacy. And even though we are doing sandbox to sandbox movement, but we provide the test classes. We provide the test coverages that time. That is a symptom of a good developer. बिकॉज अंडरस्टैंड मत क्यों होता है, पता है क्या? देखो यार, तुम सैंडबॉक्स तक से में तो फिर अभी मान के चलो कि यू क्रिएटेड समथिंग, राइट? यू क्रिएटेड समथिंग which you created into this environment. When you tested the unit testing, what you have performed, you performed into this environment. It was tested okay. It was tested okay. Then you wanted now to migrate this into another environment which may be used by somebody else. Like QA teams are there, UAT teams are there. They would going to perform the testing. They would going to perform. They also find it. QA has given you the sign off. QA sign off is completed. Now you migrate the things into UAT. UAT will going to perform its own testing. Another like has been, that is also tested. UAT sign after UAT sign off, like it's going to be, let's say there's a full copy sandbox, and that full copy sandbox would contain this. Finally, यहाँ पे स्टेज पे या फुल कॉपी सैंडबॉक्सेस में ना टेस्टिंग्स नहीं होती. Usually, it is just an intermediate environment, and we usually see for like um, एक regression testing नाम की testing होती है जिसमें we actually test it with the production data. If you remember last time I told you the full copy sandbox would always have production data. और हमने देखा था इसको like we have seen it over here as well. We have seen it over here as well. What is the data capacity of full copy sandbox? What is the data capacity of full copy sandbox? It is the same as your production environment. Do you see that? Full copy sandbox. What is the data capacity? For every one of them, there is a capacity. There is a capacity. What is the data capacity of full copy? It is same as your source, same as your production, and it contains everything. So basically what happens is like when your module is on to full copy, there's no form of there's no form of testing apart from regression. Regression is used to perform like regression is used to see how this module, whatever it is, it's a trigger, it's a code, it's a configuration, whatever it is, how this module is going to behave in real time, because on this environment we have real time data. Whatever data is present inside in production is also present inside in full copy. So this module, how it's going to behave with actual production environment data, that is tested, and that is called as regression testing. After that, finally it's get loaded to the production environment. अब जब इस मॉड्यूल को ट्रांसफर करने की बारी आ रही है और पता चला कि कोड कवरेज ही नहीं है, दैट इज सच अ शेम. दैट इज सच अ शेम. डेवलपर ने कोड कवरेज ही नहीं प्रोवाइड किया. बैक डिप्लॉयमेंट स्टार्ट होगा. यहाँ से वहां डालेंगे, वहां से यहाँ डालेंगे, वहां से यहाँ डालेंगे, एंड देन दे वुड आस्क यू, यार तू पागल है क्या यार? तेरे को पता है ना कि व्हेन दिस हैज बीन क्यूए साइन ऑफ हो गया, यूओटी साइन ऑफ हो गया, तब तक भी तुम्हारे पास बफर समय रहता है. ठीक है, अभी तुमने व्हेन यू आर मूविंग इट फ्रॉम हियर टू हियर, तब तक टेस्ट क्लास नहीं दिया तो चलता है. बट व्हेन यू दैट क्यूए हैज बीन साइन ऑफ, अब ये फाइनली जाने वाला है यूएटी पे, या फिर ये जाने वाला है आपके फाइनल एनवायरमेंट, वट एवर द फाइनल एनवायरमेंट यू हैव, एंड यू हैव नॉट सप्लाइड द कोड कवरेज. So this is considered to be, I'm not getting the proper word, but this is the foolish thing what you can attempt to. So that is the reason, we usually, even when we are deploying this to very first environment, we supply the things as a package. That means I would supply, this is my module, but I have created, I create a trigger, I create a class, and this is the test class as well. This is the test class. So what we will do is like, we right from the beginning itself, we would migrate the things like a package. This is a best practice what is being followed in the industry, and that should be your answer. Now do you get it what I want to put? I'm expecting you to say to me that if you are deploying the things from one sandbox to another sandbox, although we don't require to have a test coverage. Why? Because the test coverage are actually required when you are finally moving something from sandbox to production environment. Is that time for every trigger you must have at least 1%, and for every class you should have at least 75% of the code coverage. But as a best practice, even though if we are migrating something from one sandbox to another sandbox, we always used to give it along with the test classes. We always used to give it as a package. That means module with the test cases. This is what is the best practice, what I used to follow in my organization with my practices. Even though if you are moving it from sandbox to sandbox, I used to give it as a package. ठीक है, ये रहता है. So ये थोड़ा सा याद रखना है. I'm not sure whether it has been written somewhere, but it has been not. ठीक है, चलो. Now this much knowledge you requires. अब उसके बाद में एक्चुअली आपको डिप्लॉयमेंट लेके चलता हूँ. अभी तक हमने क्या जाना? हमने जाना कि हम एक्चुअल काम कहाँ करते हैं सैंडबॉक्सेस पे. सैंडबॉक्सेस क्या होता है, कैसे क्रिएट किए जाते हैं, उसके टाइप्स क्या होते हैं. उसके बाद हमने जब माइग्रेशन की बात आ रही है तो फिर हमने कोड कवरेजेस के बारे में बात किया. ठीक है, सैंडबॉक्सेस भी हमने क्रिएट कर लिए. चलो अब हम डिप्लॉयमेंट करेंगे. तो नाउ आई वांटेड टू डिप्लॉय. तो मैं काम करता, आई वुड बी फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल गोइंग टू क्रिएट समथिंग from developer sandbox. I would be from I would be developing something inside developer sandbox, और वो चीज मैं मे बी एक कस्टम ऑब्जेक्ट बना लेता हूँ with few of the fields. ठीक है. अच्छा एक चीज और जान लो, सुनो, ये कहानी यहाँ पे खत्म नहीं होने वाली. आई कैन नॉट क्रिएट अ लॉट ऑफ द थिंग्स इनसाइड इन दिस सैंडबॉक्स. मैं यहाँ बहुत कुछ नहीं बना सकता. एक नॉर्मल दिखाऊंगा मैं आपको. उसके बाद अभी मेरी बात ध्यान से सुनिए सभी. जब जब मैं रियल टाइम पे, जैसे मैंने आज एक चीज बचा के रखी है आप लोगों, ऐसा कुछ भी मैं रियल टाइम पे जब मैं डिप्लॉय करूंगा, आई एम गोइंग टू आस्क टू ज्वाइन। और हो सकता है मोस्टली वो वर्किंग आवर्स में हो, ठीक है, वो मोस्टली वर्किंग आवर्स में, 10 to 5, 10 to 6 के बीच में। So if you are free enough, you just, even though if you are like, if you are somewhere, you can definitely join me onto mobile phone as well, right? I'm not going to provide you recordings of that because that's a real time thing. But you would going to become a pro into deployment. तो आई यूजुअली अभी तक मैं 206 206 के साथ में ये कर रहा था, आई वाज डूइंग दिस कि whenever I do a deployment which I feel is something you should know, I just drop in a link into 206 group and I say, if you are free and if you wanted to join this, if you wanted to become a part, please join. Meanwhile, when I do this deployment, I used to explain few of the things. Otherwise, मैं सिर्फ deployment करते जाता था. And if they wanted to ask me anything, वो पूछ लिया करते. So this I'm going to do with you as well because there are a lot of the things what you couldn't understand. अभी तो मैं I can just show you like how custom object बनाऊंगा with few of the custom field और मैं deploy कर दूंगा. But ये इतना आसान नहीं है. There are other few considerations. जब आप when you are deploying something class, तो उसके लिए कैसे deployment होता है. When you are moving trigger, तो उसके लिए deployment कैसा होता है. When you are moving a profile, है ना, तो उसका डिप्लॉयमेंट कैसे होता है. तो देर आर अ लॉट ऑफ द थिंग्स टू बी अंडरस्टैंड एंड दिस कैन नॉट बी कवर्ड, यहाँ पे नहीं हो सकती. अगर मुझे इसको शॉर्ट में करना होता तो मैं इतनी बातें आपको बताता भी नहीं था. आई कैन एंड अप विद दिस राइट नाउ, आई कैन एंड अप द होल थिंग, बट आप जानते हो कि मेरा तरीका वो है नहीं, राइट. तो यहाँ से अभी कहानी शुरू होती है, खत्म नहीं होती है. अभी तो आपको सिर्फ सिंपल एक डिप्लॉयमेंट सीख रहे हो, अभी अलग अलग चीजें कैसे डिप्लॉय करते हो. और मैं अभी लाइक मैं ऑलमोस्ट हर वीक में एक ना एक डिप्लॉयमेंट या 2 वीक में एक ना एक डिप्लॉयमेंट करता रहता हूँ. तो आई वॉन्टेड यू टू बिकम अ पार्ट ऑफ दैट एज वेल. ठीक है, अभी तो वैसे भी तुम्हारी जर्नी बहुत बची है. अभी मैं इंटीग्रेशन पढ़ाऊंगा, उसके बाद में तुम्हारा लाइटनिंग का स्टार्ट, उसके बाद में भी तुम्हारा चलता रहेगा. जस्ट अ मोमेंट. सो आई वॉन्टेड यू टू बिकम द पार्ट ऑफ दोज रियल टाइम थिंग्स. तो फिर आप डिप्लॉयमेंट में ना प्रो हो जाओगे. ठीक है, चलिए भाई. सो हाँ, तो अभी कैसा है, राइट नाउ वी आर टेकिंग एग्जांपल जहां वी वांटेड टू माइग्रेट फ्रॉम डेवलपर सैंडबॉक्स टू यूएटी. दिस इज सैंडबॉक्स टू सैंडबॉक्स. तो इवन बिफोर वी परफॉर्म द डिप्लॉयमेंट्स, लेट मी शो यू समथिंग. सो आप सेटअप में जाएंगे. सेटअप में जाने के बाद, वी डोंट रिक्वायर दिस. आप सेटअप में जाने के बाद में यू विल गो you will go with deployment, right? And yeah, developer sandbox and deployment settings. Deployment settings, right? You go with deployment settings. The first thing is that. Now, see, what does it means by outbound and inbound? So, outbound, if, for example, if you are right now into this organization, okay, outbound and inbound, there are two forms of the chain sets. I'm coming to that, what is a chain set, but what does it means by this terminology, outbound and inbound? What does it means by outgoing call? When you make a call, you are this person and this is another person. When you are calling to this person, right, you pick up your phone, you dial the number and you hit that dial button, call button. तो आपके मोबाइल से कॉल जा रही है, राइट, दैट्स एन आउटगोइंग कॉल. दैट्स एन आउटगोइंग कॉल. Consider this as outbound for now. When this person, the another person is calling you, you're receiving that call, that's an incoming call. So that incoming को आप inbound समझो. Understand? We are coming into that fact. So continue, continue, and then now see these two. अभी आप जो देख रहे हो, I mean when right now we are on to which sandbox, developer sandbox to production, developer sandbox to UAT. Do you see something over here? The link is broken. The link is broken. It's red and broken. Yeah, agar if I would put my cursor, there is a message. Production cannot upload production. Production cannot upload production. 208 deployment cannot upload UAT. UAT cannot upload. UAT cannot upload. UAT cannot upload to 208. Whatever it is, but this clearly indicates to me that this environment, this environment name is developer. Developer has a broken link with UAT. Developer has a broken link with production. That means right now I cannot send anything from developer to UAT because the link is broken. Why it is broken? I'm coming into that. I'm just preparing a background. I cannot send anything from developer to production. Why? Because the link is broken. How we can establish that? How we can establish that? All right. All right. I'll go and edit this. I'll go and edit this. All right. No, not from here. Not from this. Sorry. I first of all would go to uh, UAT environment. All right. Same thing. I go to UAT, I go to setup. I go to UAT and I go to setup. And then in the setup, I'll go to deploy. In the deploy, I'll go to deployment settings. I'll go to deployment setting. This diagram comes again. If you don't want to see this again, you can click onto this again. And then from here, you can see that UAT to developer is broken, UAT and for production, everything has been broken. So I'll first of all would enable this, right? I'll first of all would enable this. I'll go and click on this edit button. I'll go and click on this edit button. And then there's a small checkbox. Allow inbound changes. Allow. This is something like allow inbound call. So if somebody is calling me, I wanted to receive that call. I wanted to answer that call. So allow inbound changes. I am agreed to receive something. You are onto UAT Sandbox. You are onto UAT Sandbox. I am agreed to receive something. If somebody is calling me, I wanted to receive that. If somebody is sending me, I wanted to receive that. So that is what is inbound. That is what is an inbound, isn't it? Click on to this and save it. And save it. UAT with developer sandbox. UAT with developer sandbox, you have allowed inbound. UAT, say developer sandbox, you have allowed it. And let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. Let me refresh this interface. Just refresh it out. Let's see. Oh, okay. It has been enabled. So I'll go back to this. I'll go back to this. On this page, now what do you see? There's certain changes. There's changes in the icon, right? So because on UAT, when you go back on UAT, there were two connections. There were two connections from UAT to developer and UAT to production. Production पे अभी तक हाथ नहीं लगाया मैंने, right? But UAT में जाने के बाद में आपने इसको edit किया and then you have accepted. You have accepted. This means कि when developer sandbox would send something that UAT is going to receive. तो UAT पे आपने inbound को receive कर लिया. इसका मतलब क्या हुआ कि UAT now can receive something from developer. प्रोडक्शन पे अभी तक कुछ नहीं हुआ है. प्रोडक्शन पे आई डोंट वांटेड राइट टू सेंड समथिंग फ्रॉम डेवलपर सैंडबॉक्स अभी तक. ठीक है. हमने एक सीरीज बना रहे हैं. वी आर ट्राइंग टू फिगर आउट अ सीरीज लाइक हम डेवलपर सैंडबॉक्स से यूएटी पे भेजेंगे जो कि कनेक्शन अभी स्टैब्लिश हो चुका है. राइट. डेवलपर कैन सेंड समथिंग टू यूएटी. आपको एरो नजर आ रहा है. ऑन यूएटी लेवल यूएटी कैन रिसीव समथिंग फ्रॉम डेवलपर. कनेक्शन हो गया और यूएटी से आगे हम प्रोडक्शन पे बढ़ाएंगे. एक हम सीरीज बनाने वाले हैं. तो अभी तो यूएटी और प्रोडक्शन अभी तो ब्रेक है. राइट. तो हम अब हम चलेंगे प्रोडक्शन एंड विल रिपीट द सेम प्रोसेस. प्रोडक्शन में जाएंगे एंड विल गो विद द डिप्लॉयमेंट सेटिंग्स पे चलते हैं. डिप्लॉयमेंट सेटिंग्स उसके बाद में कंटिन्यू या डोंट शो दैट सैंडबॉक्स. अभी आप देख रहे हैं कि लाइक दिस हैज बीन ब्रोकन लिंक. तो डिप्लॉयमेंट और यूएटी और यूएटी के साथ में जो कनेक्शन है दैट इज ब्रोकन. यूएटी के साथ जो कनेक्शन है वो है ब्रोकन. तो मुझे यहाँ दोनों दिख रहे हैं. डेवलपर सैंडबॉक्स भी दिख रहा है यूएटी. मैं डेवलपर सैंडबॉक्स से डायरेक्ट नहीं लेके आऊंगा कुछ भी. तो मैं इसको हाथ नहीं लगाता. हम एक सीरीज बना रहे हैं कि वी आर कनेक्टिंग फ्रॉम डेवलपर सैंडबॉक्स. यू कैन टेक इट टू द यूएटी और यूएटी से आगे आई वांटेड कि प्रोडक्शन पे जाए. तो मैं क्या करता हूँ. प्रोडक्शन पे जाने के बाद में यूएटी वाला जो लिंक है एडिट उस पर क्लिक करता हूँ एंड आई विल मेक ओवर हियर अलाउ इनबाउंड. कि यूएटी से अगर कुछ आ रहा है तो अलाउ इनबाउंड उसको आप रिसीव करो. ठीक है. आई विल सेव इट. चलो उसके बाद I'll go back and when I refresh this now तो अब आपको यहाँ पे चेंजेस नजर आए. देखो यूएटी से प्रोडक्शन कनेक्ट हो गया, तो अभी आपकी एक ऐसी सीरीज बन गई है कि फ्रॉम डेव सैंडबॉक्स यू आर गोइंग टू सेंड समथिंग टू यूएटी, एंड फ्रॉम यूएटी यू कैन सेंड इट टू प्रोडक्शन। डेवलपर सैंडबॉक्स से कहाँ जाएगा, यूएटी जाएगा, और यूएटी से फिर कहाँ जाएगा, प्रोडक्शन। ये हो गया एक डायरेक्शन। अब इसमें एक क्वेश्चन और आता है, कैन वी सेंड समथिंग बैक टू द प्रोडक्शन टू यूएटी, या प्रोडक्शन से आप सैंडबॉक्स टू प्रोडक्शन लेके जाते हो, ठीक है, सैंडबॉक्स टू प्रोडक्शन लेके जाते हो, सैंडबॉक्स टू प्रोडक्शन लेके जाते हो, प्रोडक्शन से सैंडबॉक्स लेके जा सकते हैं क्या? आंसर इज यस, ऑफ कोर्स, दैट कुड आल्सो बी डन। तो मैंने लास्ट टाइम अगर आपको ख्याल हो, आई हैव क्लियर यू कि समटाइम्स वी डू रिक्वायर टू परफॉर्म द बैक डिप्लॉयमेंट्स, समटाइम्स in very few of the cases we also require to perform something called as a back deployment. Back deployment में क्या होता है कि you try to migrate things from production to sandbox. तो what I'm going to do, एक काम करते हैं, डेवलपर और यूएटी के बीच में तो नहीं, एग्जाम्पल है जस्ट मेरा, कर सकते हैं, प्रोडक्शन और यूएटी के बीच में बैक डिप्लॉयमेंट भी अलाउ करते हैं। अभी हमें जो सीन नजर आ रहा है वो ये नजर आ रहा है कि एक दिस इज जस्ट आप यूएटी से ना यू कैन ट्रांसफर द थिंग्स टू प्रोडक्शन। अभी ये हमें नजर आ रहा है बिकॉज आई कैन सी द एरो फ्रॉम यूएटी पॉइंटिंग आउट टू प्रोडक्शन। तो भी एक काम करता हूं मैं, राइट, आई विल मेक दिस एज अ बाई डायरेक्शनल लाइन, सिर्फ ये दो एनवायरमेंट पे, यहां नहीं करते हैं, ठीक है। सो वी हैव दैट स्ट्रेटेजी, हमारी एक स्ट्रेटेजी इस ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में कि इवन दो इफ वी वुड रिक्वायर टू परफॉर्म बैक डिप्लॉयमेंट वी रिस्ट्रिक्टेड दैट अप टिल यूएटी, तो हम उसको यूएटी पर ही रिस्ट्रिक्ट करते हैं, ठीक है। तो अब ये आई एम गोइंग टू प्रूव यू दिस। हाँ, सो आई एम क्या बोल रहा था मैं, हाँ, सो वी आर डिजाइनिंग अ स्ट्रेटजी लाइक इफ अगर we wanted to do the back deployment that could be done between production and UAT only. अभी जो सीन तैयार हुआ है उसमें UAT can send to production, production cannot send back anything to the UAT, right? So let's make this as UAT. तो आपको जिस किसी से रिसीव करवाना होता है, like you understand one thing, मैं कैसे किया, I first of all have decided that UAT should receive something from developer sandbox, तो मैं UAT पे आया और I go to this edit, UAT पे आने के बाद edit पे गया, इसको क्लिक किया, राइट, बिल्कुल सही। उसके बाद में हमने डिसाइड किया कि प्रोडक्शन शुड रिसीव समथिंग, है ना, प्रोडक्शन शुड रिसीव एक में यार, इसको मैं हटा ही देता हूँ, या प्रोडक्शन शुड रिसीव समथिंग फ्रॉम यूएटी। तो यू गो टू, आप हमेशा ना रिसीविंग वाले एनवायरमेंट पे जाते हो, यू गो टू प्रोडक्शन, प्रोडक्शन में आपने यूएटी वाली जो लिंक है उसको क्लिक किया और अलाउ इनबाउंड कर दिया इसको। सो नाउ यू गेट दिस, यहाँ से ऐसा बन गया। अब हम दूसरी बात कर रहे हैं, हम बैक डिप्लॉयमेंट्स की बात कर रहे हैं। So I also wanted कि in certain circumstances maybe we could back deploy something from production back to sandbox, but that sandbox is not going to be developer in any case. Even though if we are establishing a return path, that path can take you up to maximum at UAT. After UAT there is a dead end. So उसके लिए UAT should be enabled to receive something from production, isn't it? Like production is now enabled to receive things from UAT. UAT is enabled to receive the things from developer, but UAT is not enabled to receive the things from production. तो इसके लिए कैसे करना पड़ेगा? You can see there's a name of production itself. ये भाई UAT environment है. This environment can receive from developer sandbox, जिसको हमने enable कर दिया है. This environment can also receive from production. वो नहीं किया हमने, ठीक है? So I'll go back and edit this. Just कुछ नहीं भाई, allow inbound change set and save it. ठीक है? Save it. Now if you would go back, so now if you'll come to this page, do you see what? Bi-directional line. So this is the answer. Yes, we can bring the things, we can perform something called as back deployment, and we can migrate the things from production to UAT. So between production and UAT, I'm keeping it bi-directional. Between this, I'm keeping it bi-directional. Let me show you something. Let me show you something for real time. So this is my sandbox. This is my sandbox, right? It's a partial copy sandbox I have with me. Let me show you something. Now, when I go to sandbox, you see uh, deployment settings. The same how we navigate ourselves into your classic. See, classic and lightning, there's not much difference in the experience point of view, right? And my sandbox name is dev team sandbox, as you can see. Now, when we consider dev team along with production, if you see this connection, see dev team along with production, I make it bidirectional. Just like अभी जो आपने देखा है ना, this you have seen. UAT and production is bidirectional. You can move things from UAT to production, as well as you can perform the back deployment from production to UAT. Similarly, dev team sandbox, my sandbox, I make it like, you can transfer things from dev team to production. Even if in some cases, if I do require to migrate the things back to sandbox, I can do this with, right? These are some other sandboxes, but I have no concern. So these are not connected with me. These are not connected with me. Between dev team and EPG, bidirectional, right? So this is basically what. So before you perform the deployment, you actually would first of all have to establish the connections. And how to establish that connection? Go to deployment settings. Go to deployment settings, and from deployment settings, you can definitely establish the connections. Okay. So this is the whole connection. अभी देखो डेवलपर सैंडबॉक्स को प्रोडक्शन से मैंने हाइड करके रखा है. किसी भी सूरत में आप डेवलपर सैंडबॉक्स से प्रोडक्शन पर डिप्लॉय नहीं कर सकते. ठीक है, आप डेवलपर सैंडबॉक्स से प्रोडक्शन पर डिप्लॉय नहीं कर सकते. यू कैन नॉट डू दैट. हाँ, डेवलपर से आप यूएटी पर ही लेके जाओगे. यूएटी से फिर हाँ, यू कैन मूव इट टू प्रोडक्शन, एंड इफ समथिंग इज रिक्वायर्ड यू कैन इवन मूव थिंग्स बैक टू फ्रॉम प्रोडक्शन टू यूएटी एज वेल. ठीक है, तो एक सीरीज बनाई है हमने. चलो, नाउ लेट्स परफॉर्म द डिप्लॉयमेंट्स. तो उसके लिए काम करता हूँ. आई फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल क्रिएट समथिंग. तो मैं आई जस्ट क्रिएट वन कस्टम ऑब्जेक्ट. तो हम चलते हैं क्रिएट पे, एंड जितना भी हो सकता है, आई हैव अ रियल टाइम एग्जांपल, सो डोंट वरी. मैं जितना भी हो सकता है मैं सब करता हूँ. So I'm creating a custom object. I'm creating a custom object. Let's say the custom object name. Let's say the custom object name. Hiring manager. Okay. Hiring manager. This, and whatever you have learned, allow the reports, allow the activities and everything. Deployed, allow search and launch. Launch. उसके लिए tab भी ले लिया, and then save it. Let's try to create the next. And टैब की विजिबिलिटी ये सारे यूजर्स हैं, उसके लिए डिफॉल्ट ऑन है. ठीक है, लेट्स गो विद द डिफॉल्ट, एंड यू आर इंक्लूडिंग दिस, यू आर इंक्लूडिंग दिस. हाँ, यहाँ पे लेट मी शो यू समथिंग. Now, for example, I am now these are the applications. Yeah, let's include this in every application. These are applications. So चलो सब भी मैं include कर दो, कोई दिक्कत नहीं. Okay, so now we have this object, right? We have this object. Understood? We have this object. Now let me try to create certain custom fields as well. So I'm creating a field. हमारे पास वो डेटाबेस था यार, आईडीडी थी अपने पास में उसके हिसाब से. यस यस यस, अकॉर्डिंग टू दिस वुड हेल्प. So hiring manager, let me create a field called contact number with the data type as phone. So I would be creating a phone, and next. So the name of the field would be contact number. Next. Make it visible for all of the profile users. Next. Let it be landed onto this page layout. Save. The next would be I have HR email ID, and that should be an email field. Next. And next. And save a new. Next is HR ID, which actually I'm making is as an auto number. Display format would be this one. Starting number would be 001. Next, save. Next, save and new. Next is location, which is a pick list field. So I would be selecting a pick list. Next, no global values. We wanted to enter it. So these are the values. Just copy and paste it out. Next, and next, and save. All right. So now, as you can see, we have an object, a tab, right? I have an object, a tab with all these fields, right? With all these fields, with all these fields. So with all these fields, we have we have an object and tab. And let's say we wanted to deploy this. Presently, this is present into developer sandbox. I wanted to migrate it into UAT. UAT does not right now does not have this. So if you would go to create and you click onto object, so in the custom object, you can see there's nothing, right? There's nothing. So I wanted to now perform a deployment. Okay, अब हम deployment. So I'm going to deploy this module, a custom object with a custom tab and few of the custom fields inside in that. I wanted to deploy this from one sandbox to another sandbox, right? We are deploying this thing from developer sandbox and we are taking it to the UAT sandbox. All right. Now, let me click onto the setup menu. Go to the deployments, deploy. And from here, you have to create something called as change sets. You have to create something called as a change set. Change set. What is a change set? Change, as the name itself indicates, change set. Whatever the changes you have committed, create a set of them. Changes मतलब जो कुछ भी आपने बनाया है. Things what you wanted to deploy. Things what you wanted to deploy. You can call those as a changes. You can call them as a changes. And this is a common terminology, right? So if I wanted to, if I wanted to write somebody a mail about deployment, so what I'm going to use this terminology. My changes are, for example, I wanted to inform you that I have not done the deployment due to certain reasons. So what I'm going to write in the mail, my changes are yet to be finalized. My changes are yet to be finalized, and so I have not deployed the things. So what does it mean by the changes? Changes means whatever I am working on to and which you wanted me to deploy. These things are called as changes. Everything. Now changes include everything. वो कुछ भी रह सकता है. It could be an object, application. I'm going to show you the list of all them. Reports, profiles, classes, triggers, everything. उसको change बोलते हैं. So when you wanted to transfer something, you are a developer. So when you wanted to transfer something, you have to create something called as outbound change set. From this environment, I wanted to transfer something. मैं भेजना चाहता हूं. So when you wanted to send something, you wanted to make an outgoing call. That reflects to outbound change set. So what you have to create something called as an outbound change set. Click onto that. Click onto that, right? I'm just hiding this again and again. Continue. So now I'm creating a chain set. Which type of chain set? Outbound chain set. Outbound. I wanted to send something. I wanted to send something. So I'm creating an outbound chain set, right? Is there any one of them? Right now we don't have. Otherwise, it would contain the list of all outbound chain sets what you have used in the past. What you have used in the past. It would show you the list of. It would show you the list of all outbound chain sets what you have used in the past. Let me side by side show you the real things from the real. So if I make a click onto outbound chain set, like I did it over here, outbound chain set where I have clicked, यहाँ तो list blank है, of course it has to be. See the same interface, lightning, देखो lightning or classic. Do you find anything differences? No. मैं बताया ना सिर्फ navigation का difference है. Otherwise pages almost same. So you can see the list of all those outbound change sets that you have created. These are the list of all outbound change sets, right? What you have created. You can see the list of all of them in this page. You can see the list of all of them, right? For this, the list is blank because obviously we have not created anything. You can understand. Click onto new. Click onto new. Let's create a chain set. Acha, why time I have this tendency to close out the things. Second. Naming convention. Let's talk about that. I can give any name. Outbound chain set I'm creating, I can give any name. See something from here, try to observe. Try to observe. Target trigger. Target is the name of an object. I created a trigger. Target trigger, version 1. Version 2, version 3. Target count, batch is a class, batch class. Version 1, 2, 3. Target account page, version 1, version 2. Target flow. Target tab and page layout, version 1, version 2. CR, change request, 2 to 9, version 1, version 2, version. What do you observe? What do you observe? Whenever I give name, first of all, I maintain the versions, right? So whenever I deploy something, first of all, the name which I give is almost relevant to what I'm trying to deploy. I just looking into this and I can understand what I was deploying that time, right? I was deploying something from this page, this business unit. I was deploying a change request. I was deploying a trigger. I was deploying a report. I was deploying a page layout. I was deploying a fields. I was deploying tab. Understood? This is a proper naming convention. Nobody is going to tell you this. Nobody will going to tell you this. The way which I used to say, nobody would tell you this, right? They kept it up to your understanding, up to your intelligence. But see guys, ये pattern अपने को follow करने का है. All right, चलो. So what I am deploying? I am deploying an HR manager. Let's say module. Okay, module. And always create the versions, because we never know that this version is going to be, is going to be succeeded. Sometimes you need to redeploy. Deployments में error आते हैं. So always have this. You can see this. I mean, if there are 3 versions, इसका मतलब मेरे पहले दोनों वर्जन फेल हो चुके हैं और थर्ड वाला सक्सेसफुल हुआ है ना? यहाँ पे देखो, रिपोर्ट जब मैं डिप्लॉय कर रहा था तो पहले 3 वर्जन फेल हो चुके हैं. कहाँ फेल होते हैं बताता हूँ मैं. चौथा वर्जन जो है डिप्लॉय. तो हमेशा वर्जन्स बनाया. डोंट थिंक कि आप पहली बार में सक्सेसफुल हो जाते हो. तो कभी कभी क्या होता है कि देयर आर स्मॉल डिपेंडेंसीज व्हाट यू फॉरगॉट टू मेंशन, व्हाट यू फॉरगॉट टू इंक्लूड द डिपेंडेंसीज. सो दैट टाइम उसकी वजह से आपका डिप्लॉयमेंट फेल हो जाता है. सो यू वांटेड टू रिपीट द सेम थिंग. मुझे फिर से वापस यही करना है. एंड दैट्स व्हाई आई हैव क्रिएटेड दिस एचआर वर्जनिंग रखता हूं मैं. So with this name HR manager module version 1, I'm creating a outbound chain set. अभी मेरा chain set बन गया. Chain set is just like a package. It's a box. What you wanted to transfer. अब हमें उसमें क्या क्या डालना है, क्या क्या डालना है. उसके लिए आना है आपको chain set components. और अगर if you wanted to include a profile, तो आपको profiles पे यहाँ पे आना पड़ता है. आज जो एग्जाम्पल मैं शो करने वाला हूँ आप लोगों को, उसमें प्रोफाइल्स पे बताऊंगा मैं. ठीक है, चलिए. तो चेन सेट में क्या क्या कंपोनेंट डालना है. दिस यू हैव टू चेन सेट कंपोनेंट्स. यहाँ पर आइए, आप इस सेक्शन में आइए. दिस इज जस्ट द डिटेल्स ऑफ द चेन सेट जो आपने बनाया, किसने बनाया, कब बनाया, क्या है. अब चेन सेट में कंपोनेंट ऐड करो. अभी ये बॉक्स खाली है. इफ आई एम प्रेजेंटिंग यू समथिंग, तो मैं खाली बॉक्स थोड़ी ना लेके आऊंगा आपकी पार्टी में. आई विल पुट समथिंग इनसाइड इन दैट बॉक्स एज अ गिफ्ट फॉर यू, है ना. सो आप ये चेन सेट को अभी थोड़ी ना अपलोड करोगे. वैसे भी अपलोड दिख ही नहीं रहा है क्योंकि इसमें कंपोनेंट एडेड नहीं है. तो अपलोड का बटन यू सी ये हाईलाइटेड नहीं है अभी. यू विल हैव टू ऐड द कंपोनेंट्स. तो वो कंपोनेंट हम यहाँ से ऐड करते हैं. सो आई ऐड दिस. अब मैं बताना चाहता हूँ कि चेंजेस मतलब क्या क्या हो सकता है. यू कैन डिप्लॉय, यू कैन ट्रांसफर एन एप्लीकेशन, दिस एवरीथिंग. एक्शन, एपेक्स शेयरिंग रीजन, एसेट, ऑरा, ठीक है, buttons, custom fields, custom object, which in our case अभी हम वही करने वाले हैं, report, dashboards, digital experiences, community pages, email templates. You have created a lot of email template during that topic जब हमने पढ़ा था ना, आपने बहुत सारी email templates बनाई हैं. Escalation rules, if you have any, flow, if you have created any flow, right? If you have created a workflow rule, that will also come over here. So these are those things. See, workflows, visual force pages, validation rules, understand? Tabs. So these are the components of change sets. So chalo one by one. First of all, what we have created an object, custom object. So I'll go to the list of custom objects. I'll go to the list of custom object, right? I'll select the custom object. It would contain the list of all custom objects. It would show you the list of all custom objects. It would show you the list of all custom objects. हमारी केस में एक ही है. हमारी केस में एक ही है. One second. So I would add what I see. देखो आप क्लासिक में लाइटनिंग में कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता, राइट? कस्टम ऑब्जेक्ट रियल टाइम में देखो, लिस्ट ऑफ कस्टम, राइट? लिस्ट ऑफ ऑल कस्टम ऑब्जेक्ट्स. यहाँ पे we have only one. Otherwise it would show you the list of all custom objects what you have. Target is one of them. Price list, ठीक है? So there are so many of the objects, custom objects. सारी लिस्ट आती है आपको. And select whatever you wanted. I have selected this. Add to change set. Next, अभी आपने कस्टम ऑब्जेक्ट तो ऐड कर दिया, बट ऑब्जेक्ट के साथ में टैब भी तो होता है, कस्टम फील्ड्स भी तो होती हैं, and everything you have to add. You have to add everything. So I would go again with add button. This time I wanted to add the tab, so I'll select tab, tab select करो, add to change set. Then we have custom fields. मैंने कुछ custom fields, because ये आप जब include करते हो तो सिर्फ standard fields जाती हैं. एक ऑब्जेक्ट में कितनी standard fields होती हैं? Usually 5 हम जानते हैं, ID, name, owner, created by, last modified by. उसके अलावा भी होती हैं, last modified by date, last modified by IDs, है ना, ये सब जाती हैं उसमें. Is deleted, is active, बट सिर्फ स्टैंडर्ड फील्ड जाती है. कस्टम आपको ट्रांसफर करनी पड़ती है, फिर से ऐड करो. क्या इस बार क्या डालना है आपको? कस्टम फील्ड्स. सो आई वुड बी सिलेक्टिंग कस्टम फील्ड्स, ठीक है? आई वुड बी सिलेक्टिंग कस्टम फील्ड. देखो ये सारी कस्टम फील्ड्स आ रही हैं. अपॉर्चुनिटी ऑब्जेक्ट में इतनी है, हायरिंग मैनेजर में ये है, यहाँ पे ऑब्जेक्ट भी लिख के आ रहा है ना, हायरिंग मैनेजर. सो हायरिंग मैनेजर की कस्टम फील्ड जितनी भी हमने क्रिएट करी है, ओनली दोस आर द थिंग्स, यू नो व्हाट आई वांटेड टू ऐड. सो ऐड टू चेंज सेट. आई हैव सिलेक्टेड ऑल ऑफ देम, आई गेस. यस, राइट. ऐड टू चेंज सेट. Add to change set. Right now we have our object, we have custom object, we have the tab which we have created, and we have custom fields. And sometime along with this you'll also have to deploy the profiles. मैं दिखाता हूँ वो live example, ठीक है? If you wanted to deploy the profile, go with add profile. What profile you wanted to deploy? Like standard administrator profile, तो include into that. अभी इसकी जरूरत नहीं है फिलहाल, अभी जरूरत नहीं है. अभी मैं जो एक रियल टाइम बता रहा हूँ उसमें बताऊंगा और रीजंस भी बताऊंगा क्यों मैं कर रहा हूँ ऐसा, ठीक है? बट प्रोफाइल जो होती है ना, प्रोफाइल यू कैन नॉट एड इट फ्रॉम द कंपोनेंट. प्रोफाइल हैज टू बी एडेड इन अ सेपरेट सेक्शन, ठीक है? सो इन द चेन सेट, इफ यू वांटेड टू ऐड अ प्रोफाइल, यू कैन नॉट गो विद चेन सेट कंपोनेंट सेक्शन. You cannot add it from add components. You will have to do this from add profile. There's a separate section for that, right? There's a separate section for that. Anyways, now my chain set is ready. My chain set is ready. The changes which I wanted to deploy is being included. The changes what I committed and I wanted to deploy is being included. Everything what I wanted to transfer, what I wanted to migrate has been included inside in this chain set. All right. So once you are ready with this, go and upload. Go and upload. Go and upload. So it would ask you like where you wanted to me, where you wanted to upload me this, right? Where you wanted to upload this. It shows something. एक चीज और देखो आप यहाँ पर साइड बाय साइड जितना हो रहा है मैं तुमको दिखाता चला जा रहा हूँ. It would ask me where do you wanted me to upload this. See, this is the list of all environments कि जहां dev team से मैं भेज सकता हूँ. This is the list of all those environment from where I can deploy this chain set. इनको मैंने कनेक्ट कर रखा है. इस environment के साथ, इस sandbox के साथ I have connected production and 2 other sandboxes. It would ask you, आप लोग कहाँ भेजना है यार? The chain set what you have created. Where do you wanted me to send this? With this example, मैंने इसको सिर्फ UAT से connect कर रखा है. कि changes which I would be creating, I would be deploying from developer can only go to UAT. Otherwise, it would ask you the list. It would give you the list of all those environments. Okay, bhai sahab, where do you want it to send it? Right? Chalo, UAT and upload. UAT and upload. So when you have asked this upload, it would take some significant time. यहाँ पे लिख के आता है your uploads are currently और जैसे ही हो जाएगा यहाँ पे ये I का symbol हट जाएगा and it would give you a right symbol शायद यहाँ पे. ठीक है. और moreover आपको एक email आता है यहाँ पे कि your changes has been uploaded. So you'll have to wait for that, right? यहाँ पे ये when you ask for the upload, अभी बैठ जाओ, थोड़ी देर बैठ जाओ, चुपचाप बैठ जाओ and just observe this. Just wait for some time. And you don't require to refresh this page. Don't think like I'll have to refresh the page. ये automatically हो जाता है. But फिर भी आप if out of curiosity you wanted, you can definitely refresh it out. No problem. But ये जैसे ही upload होता है ना, it would show you the message automatically over here. अपने आप ही दिखा देगा. Maybe because this is going for the first time. That could be a reason it takes that much of time. Usually it does not take. If you are continuously doing a deployment from one environment to another environment, it used to maintain the cache. So इतना समय usually नहीं लगता because we are probably doing this for the first time. So maybe some internal files are getting created, so that is one of the reason. इसमें इतना समय लग रहा है. All right. So in the meantime, In the meantime, हम्म, या फिर रुक जाते हैं, मैं बीच में दूसरा टॉपिक नहीं डालता मैं. लेट्स वेट फॉर सम टाइम. I'll pause recording for a moment. I mean, this is taking certainly a lot of time. So let me pause the recording for a moment. And please remind me to, please remind me to resume. Yes. So now we can see that changes has been uploaded, right? And we expecting one email as well. So whenever your changes is uploaded, you got this kind of email. Now, so this changes, I mean, the change set what you have uploaded has been like, has been just uploaded, not deployed, right? So you'll just have to go with that destination environment from where you have uploaded this. So because from developer sandbox, I uploaded this to UAT. So I'll go with UAT. I'll go with UAT, and inside in UAT, you first of all go to the inbound chain set. See, from this environment, right? From this environment, it was an outbound chain set. And why it was outbound? Because I was sending something. I was sending something. So I have added everything into the outbound chain set. Now, this is my receiver environment. This is my receiver environment, right? Here, I'm actually receiving that chain set. So I'll have to go with inbound chain set in that case. So I'll have to go with inbound chain set. When you are typically receiving something, right? You'll have to go with inbound chain set. So it would show you like it would show you all of the changes which are waiting for deployment, but it is not showing that. That's pretty strange thing. Destination is UAT Sandbox. Oh, this is production. Maybe it's production. 1 second, let me go to UAT Sandbox. I guess I have. Uh, I I closed that. When I don't realize that, but I have closed. All right. So in the UAT Sandbox, you'll have to go with inbound chain set. So let me make a click over there in the inbound chain set and see. So this is that chain set which we have uploaded from the developer sandbox, and now we can see it over here inside the UAT sandbox, right? Inside in the UAT sandbox, you can see. I was trying to search it out in the production, so we obviously why production में थोड़ा ना upload किया मैंने. Now you have validate, you have deploy. There are two things. So it is always recommended. Listen this. It is always recommended that before deploying something, you should first of all validate. To validate would internally run a test to see the things that after this change set has been deployed, if it is producing any error or not. Are this going to be deployed successfully or your deployment is getting failed? So it is always recommended, it's always recommended that before deploying anything directly, don't deploy anything directly into any environment. You first of all validate that. So I'll make a click onto this validate, right? I'll make a click onto this validate. I would go with default. I don't want it to run any test. I don't want to run any test. I'm coming to this one when I'll show you the live example. I'm going to come. I'm going to see. I'm going to make you aware about these three options, particularly for the code part. When you are either deploying a trigger or a code or a class, right, something like that, then we'll talk about this. Abhinay, you just select the default option and click on to validate button. Click onto the validate button. So it would perform a local testing inside. You wanted to see the status, go with the deployment status page. Deployment status page. And it would, it would eventually run a test over here. And based on that test, it would say like validation failed or succeeded. So if it is succeeded, then only we could deploy, otherwise not. If the validation is failed, you'll have to come back over here, make those changes, clone this, create another version 2, जैसा मैंने आपको बताया. If my validation would get failed over here, I'll come back to this environment and see for the errors. I first of all would clone this, है ना? If I would clone this, उसके बाद में I'll give a name like version 2. I'll add whatever has to be added, and I redeploy that. उसको फिर से upload करूंगा मैं. Once that is uploaded, I'll come back over here and once again I'll validate this, right? So this is a repeatedly process. And that is the reason whenever you are getting a change set, usko versioning do. Because sometimes, in the first version itself, you can deploy, but kabhi-kabhi errors bhi aate hain. कुछ dependencies होती जो we always used to forgot that. तो फिर उसकी वजह से भी errors आते हैं. है ना? And that dependent and that everything would come over here. यहाँ पता चलता है. चलिए. So now because in this case we are very successful, so I'll just go back to that once again. Now our right. So yeah. So because we already have validated, right? So right now I'm going to deploy this. So this is my going to second step. Again, I'm not going to select any of these options. These are for the coding part. What exactly I'm going to talk on that as well. Abhi my default is select karunga. This is again a same process. Again, this is the same process, right? So the deployment has been started. I'll go to that page and I'll see. अभी पहले validation लिख के आ रहा था, देखो अभी deployment लिख के आ रहा है. So now your deployment is succeeded. That means it is now being deployed. It is now being deployed. All right. So if you have deployed, that means this has been that One second. Yes. So now deployment is succeeded. So this actually means that we have that object, the tab, and every custom fields. Okay. But because I have not deployed, see, I have not deployed, right? If we would see it over here, hiring manager. So hiring manager was a part of sales application. So because in my chain set, I have not used that application. इसीलिए ये यहाँ पे ऐड नहीं हुआ है. Otherwise, अगर मैं if in my component, I mean अगर मैं यहाँ पे while uploading, I have added like all these, मैंने application ऐड नहीं किया. सेल्स एप्लीकेशन अगर मैं ऐड करता तो उसके साथ में ये टैब बार भी आ जाता था. चलो तो वो नहीं हुआ, बट या वी कैन डू दिस मैनुअली एज वेल. आप मैनुअली यू नो हाउ टू ब्रिंग दैट, राइट? कस्टमाइज माय टैब बार एंड वी हैव दैट हायरिंग मैनेजर. ओके, ठीक है, ठीक है, ठीक है, नहीं दिख रहा, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं. लेट्स गो टू सेटअप मेन्यू and then go to manage users and users inside in this environment. Go with the profile. Profiles भी मैंने deploy नहीं करी हैं. So because the changes what I have committed. अच्छा ठीक है, रुको हम इसको फिर से रीडिप्लॉयमेंट करते हैं. डोंट डू इट लाइक दिस मैन, मैनुअली नहीं करते हैं. ऑलराइट, चलो मैनुअली नहीं करते हैं. आई विल क्लोन दिस. दो चीजें छूट गई है मुझसे. सो आई विल क्रिएट अनदर वर्जन ऑफ दैट, वर्जन 2. आई विल सेव इट. Now along with this, what you want to add? I wanted to add, एक तो मैं application add कर देता हूँ, ठीक है? This application sales. I guess I don't think it would require. फिर भी मैं कर देता हूँ. नहीं 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 नहीं, इसकी जरूरत नहीं पड़ेगी. नहीं नहीं. I guess we just need to include the profile. ठीक है? Because we have committed these changes into system admin profile, right? कैसे मैं दिखाता हूँ आपको. I'll show you. देखो उससे भी पहले, इसके पहले कि हम डिप्लॉयमेंट करें, let me show you. चलो I'll go with the users. यूजर की ये प्रोफाइल है, सिस्टम एडमिन प्रोफाइल. ठीक है? Now system admin profile पे if you go with the, if you can go with the object level, custom object. ठीक है? If you go with the custom object, which is below over here. So हाँ, इस एनवायरनमेंट में सी दिस, क्या क्या डिफरेंस है? डेवलपर सैंडबॉक्स पे कस्टम ऑब्जेक्ट परमिशन हायरिंग मैनेजर के लिए इनेबल्ड है, राइट? और इफ सेम थिंग अगर आप यहाँ जाते हो ना, इस प्रोफाइल पे यूएटी पे इफ यू वुड सी एंड यू वुड ट्राई टू एडिट दिस, तो यू विल सी वन थिंग. यहाँ पे तो कस्टम ऑब्जेक्ट है ही नहीं, राइट? सो यहाँ पे नहीं नहीं कस्टम ऑब्जेक्ट है, यहाँ पे दिख रहा है. ओके, तो फिर ये क्यों नहीं आ रहा? फाइल, फाइल पे इनेबल है, फाइल पे इनेबल है. क्या छूट गया मुझसे? देखो ऐसा होता है, दिस इज द रीजन, यू नो, यू हैव टू लाइक वी ऑलवेज से द वर्जनिंग पार्ट. ठीक है, रुको मुझे एक एनालिसिस करने दो इसकी. डू आई गेट द ऑब्जेक्ट? ऑब्जेक्ट आ गया मुझको. डू आई गेट द टैब? टैब भी है. टैब की विजिबिलिटी क्या है वो चेक कर लेता हूँ. टैब भी है. टैब की विजिबिलिटी, चेक दिस. One second, guys. One second. Let me try to do this analysis. कि क्यों नहीं आ रहा है? It's not come. It's able है. So again, I'll check it with the usually profiles का issue हो जाता है इसमें. System admin profile which cannot be custom. tab, नहीं tab देख लेता हूँ. I'm looking for the tab. See. ये प्रॉब्लम कस्टम टैब सेटिंग्स में हायरिंग मैनेजर का जो टैब है इट इज हिडन। ठीक है। मुझे सोचने दो कि इसको मैनुअली करना पड़ता है या चेंज सेट से लाते हैं। नहीं, चेंज सेट से लाते हैं। Yes, I am not sure. Let me research a little onto this. बट जितना अभी समझ में आ रहा है मुझे, बिकॉज आई हैव नॉट इंक्लूडेड प्रोफाइल, स्टिल वो प्रोफाइल पे दिख रहा है, टैब मैंने इंक्लूड किया है। मैं फिर भी इस पे बाद में अच्छे से बताऊंगा, बट आई गेस दिस हैज टू बी डन मैनुअली। इसको हम पोस्ट डिप्लॉयमेंट स्टेप्स बोलते हैं। सो व्हेन यू डू द डिप्लॉयमेंट विद चेंज सेट, देयर आर प्री एंड पोस्ट डिप्लॉयमेंट स्टेप। कोपाडो से नहीं होता ऐसा कुछ, कोपाडो में बस डिप्लॉयमेंट होता है। सो प्रोफाइल मैंने भले इंक्लूड नहीं करी, लेकिन प्रोफाइल पे है। आई गेस दिस हैज टू बी डन मैनुअली एवरी टाइम। तो आपको अभी क्या हुआ कि वी वर लुकिंग इनटू दिस, राइट? हमने यहाँ पे देखा एंड वी वर ट्राइंग टू ब्रिंग अप दैट टैब ओवर हियर। हमने देखा ऑब्जेक्ट तो आ चुका है, टैब भी आ चुका है, एंड वी वर ट्राइंग टू कस्टमाइज दैट। हम यहाँ लेके आना चाहते थे, बट वी वर नॉट फाइंडिंग दैट हायरिंग मैनेजर। सो उसका रीजन ये था कि आई गो विद द प्रोफाइल। प्रोफाइल में जाने के बाद मैं एक डिप्लॉयमेंट और करता हूँ, रुको, अभी हम श्योर कर ही लेते हैं इस चीज को। एक डिप्लॉयमेंट और करते हैं हम लोग, ठीक है? बिकॉज यहाँ पे टैब डिफॉल्ट ऑन है और यहाँ पे उसको डिफॉल्ट टैब हिडन किया। मैं मैनुअली कर सकता हूँ, ऑफ कोर्स आई कैन मेक द चेंजेस ओवर हियर, बट मैं एक बार एक डिप्लॉयमेंट और करता हूँ एंड लेट मी सी कि ये मैनुअल स्टेप है या इसको हम चेंज सेट के थ्रू कर सकते हैं। सो आई वुड गो टू आउटबाउंड चेंज सेट वंस अगेन। ठीक है, ये मॉड्यूल 2 मैंने क्लोन कर रखा है, इसी को मैं एडिट करता हूँ एंड आई वुड जस्ट ऐड वन थिंग। मैं इसमें प्रोफाइल ऐड कर लेता हूँ, सिस्टम एडमिन प्रोफाइल ऐड कर लेता हूँ, ऐड टू चेंज सेट। ठीक है, ऐड टू चेंज सेट एंड नाउ along with all these fields and tabs and everything, I have added I have added this as well। ठीक है, सिस्टम एडमिन प्रोफाइल मैंने ऐड कर दी एंड लेट्स अपलोड दिस वंस अगेन। फिर से अपलोड करते हैं इसको, अपलोड दिस टू यूएटी एनवायरनमेंट, अपलोड कर लेते हैं एंड लेट्स वेट फॉर सम टाइम। तो फिर इसको मैनुअली नहीं करते हम लोग, इसको एक और बार डिप्लॉयमेंट करते हैं। सो लेट्स गो टू द इनबाउंड चेंज सेट and let's wait for some time. So we find out the differences between the standard profile, the system admin profile over here and over here. All right. So that is the reason I am trying to deploy the profile once again. Along with this change set, I have included profile this time. So this is what we are trying. And now the chain set has been uploaded. So I'll go back to this once again. I'll refresh that. And we would going to see the name of version 2 in the changes that are awaiting to deployment over here. As you can see, I would repeat the same process as we have validated, but still I wanted you to follow the same process. So I'll go and first before deployment, I would validate these changes. And because this validation has been started, I'll go to with this validation in progress. I'll wait for some time. This has been succeeded. I'll go back and this time I'll deploy. This time I'll deploy with the default option. I'll go to this page, deployment settings, and I would wait for some time. And now I closely observe this, whether we are going to get it over here or what, right? So now this has been deployed. I'll refresh this interface. So what we observe is like, it has not been added to the tab bar because I have not deployed the application. But this is a manual step, of course. I'll go back and now I would see whether I have that tab available over here or not. And yes, you can see it is available, right? So this I was trying to make you understand that there might be few of the process, there might be few of the things which we'll have to do manually, but we'll have to, we'll have to understand what has to be done manually post deployment step, or which has to be done along with the deployment. So what we did is like we migrated the object and everything related to the object, like tab, like custom fields, but then we have not migrated the application and the profile. because I have enabled this onto the profile. And when I have not migrated the profile to this environment, so there are two things left with us. Either you can do this manually, or the better, bring it along with the change set. Always try to bring it along with the change set, right? Never try to implement the things manually over here. Although in the chain set, let's see, I mean, chain set wale mein, it's not, it would not going to make any difference. Lekin ye jo aadat hai na, ye kharab hai. When you do this deployment with the Copado, you would understand what is the significant differences between doing this manually and along with the chain set. Copado is used to track everything, and it maintains a repository wherein you can come back in the future and you can see out the things. Okay, what has been deployed, what has been committed. All right, so this we should avoid. This we should avoid. So I'm now adding this to the tab, and now we have this object, and we can see the fields. I'll try to create. हाँ देखो यहाँ फिर से एक चीज मैं छूट गया. I forgot to add the page layout. See, ऐसा होता है. This is what it happens. No, अभी मैं इसको chain set से नहीं करता हूँ. I'll do this manually. यहाँ जो page layout था, so I forgot to add that page layout. उसकी वजह से you will see कि आपको यहाँ fields नजर नहीं आ रही है. तो obviously you know how to make that changes. I am now doing this manually because ये बहुत ज्यादा समय ले रहा है. So मैं page layout मुझसे छूट गया है ना, इस वजह से हमें वो सारी फील्ड्स नजर नहीं आ रही हैं. बट वी नो लाइक हाउ वी कैन ऐड इट मैनुअली, बट वी शुड नॉट डू दिस. I mean, I would not recommend this to do this manually, but अभी मैं कर रहा हूँ. Please don't do this manually. तो ये अगर अगर हमारे पास समय होता तो मैं इसको फिर से रीडिप्लॉयमेंट पे जाता. All right, so now we have all these fields over here. I'll try to create one test record. ठीक है, I'll try to create a test record over here. And everything like your auto number also has been working, right? So this is what does it is deployment. Now time is almost like two ghante ho gaye. So tomorrow also we have one session. So I would try to show you one real time deployment, and जो दूसरे options है default के अलावा जो हमारे पास जो run test के options हैं, and what are other few considerations that we are going to cover it by the tomorrow's session. So tomorrow again guys, you'll have to join at 8 in the morning, right? And I would show you one real-time deployment where we're going to talk on few more scenarios, of course. That's all for today. Thank you so much for joining.